Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Wayne Baker with Affair Recovery, and today we're going to talk about grieving after an affair. Many times a betrayed spouse will ask, do I even matter, or am I who they really want? And frequently, when I'm working with a couple, the unfaithful spouse, in telling me their story of the affair, they get upset, they get sad as they talk about their affair partner or they talk about their feelings. And this can send a very confusing message to the betrayed spouse. They're hurt, they're sad, they're fearful, and not to mention even angry at this stage, especially angry at this stage. And the couple will go around and around and around about all these feelings and the meaning around those losses. Not just around the losses, but also what love is and what recovery and reconciliation, what all that looks like. And frequently it gets heated and very emotional in my office. It's so hard for the betrayed to understand the remorse and regret when the unfaithful spouse is still missing and sometimes even pining away for the affair partner. Oftentimes they'll ask, do I even matter? Is he really choosing me or is she really choosing me? And sometimes they'll say, why don't you just go be with your affair partner if you miss him so much? So what I want to do today is unpack some of that and really explore what's going on underneath. Hopelessness is the thing that kind of swallows both of them. And then depression and anxiety, despair, all of that can be overpowering. It's gut-wrenching for the betrayed spouse to hear the unfaithful spouse missing or grieving the loss of the affair partner. But it's so common in many cases. I can just think in the last couple of weeks, one of the things I'm working on with 2 different men and 1 woman is grieving the loss of the affair partner and primarily the feelings they have about themselves and what they're giving up. It's just a phase though. It sets up this perfect storm, this lingering fantasy that creates a huge barrier for the hurt spouse to feel chosen and for the unfaithful spouse to find passion and want to be in this marriage. It seems that only remorse, empathy, compassion, and even protection in the unfaithful spouse is reserved when they share their feelings about their affair and what it's cost them. And sometimes it's reserved for the affair partner rather than their spouse. While this is really troubling and causes further damage at times, it's very normal within this detox phase of recovery, especially if the unfaithful spouse fell in love with the affair partner. Dreams were created there for a new future together, most likely. And frequently, but not always, the unfaithful spouse will come back to their senses and begin to try to put their lives back together and rebuild with their spouse. And most of the time, they totally understand the need to stay away from the affair partner and work on the marriage, but too often their feelings kind of lag behind. And they probably see the flaws in their affair partner, but their feelings and the dreams of how life would be are still appealing and they're still there and they've got to be processed. Rick says that knowing something is not true doesn't necessarily make the allure of what was imagined dissipate. I can know the truth and even act on that truth, but it doesn't always feel true. If the unfaithful spouse erased their dreams of future with their spouse, they will seem more hopeless in the beginning. And it certainly doesn't mean that they don't love their mate. I want to stress that because this is a battle that I work with all the time, especially when a man has been unfaithful. And I really want you to hear me that most of the time, your husband did not stop loving you. Love is a choice, and choosing love in the absence of feeling in no way diminishes the depth of our love. It does, however, impact how that love might be perceived by the betrayed spouse. Doing what you think to be right is difficult. And due to the loss of vision, you can no longer trust your feelings. It's like flying an airplane in the dark without any instruments. You must follow what you know to be true, not what you feel. All too often, what I see is the unfaithful spouse who's tried to do the right thing over and over again, but they don't feel it. So they wonder if it's doing any good, and they'll wear out and they'll give up. I will say this, that feelings have to be acknowledged. And they're also wavering and they're changing constantly. And there's far too much at stake to be guided by our feelings alone. It's a both and. We have to acknowledge them and not trust them fully. Often the unfaithful spouse seems to be grieving the loss of their affair. The hurt spouse feels as if they've made a colossal mistake. And it's easy to assume that the unfaithful spouse isn't committed. But truthfully, that may or may not be true. More often than not, the root problem isn't the lack of commitment to the marriage, but a lack of a shared vision. This isn't just a problem for the unfaithful spouse. Dreams of a future for the betrayed spouse have been shattered as well. And the impact of the betrayal causes them to question their past, their judgment, their image of themselves and the person they married, the person they've become, everything. The devastation of infidelity isn't their only barrier. The same hopelessness demoralizes both partners, leaving them grasping for help and for a shared vision and shared dreams of what their life could be like together. That isn't to say that couples have to always feel passionate about their future together, but in the absence of passion, at the very least, they need to be committed. They need to be committed to doing the right thing, the next right thing. At the same time, they need to once again begin dreaming together and being willing to imagine a life together that they would both enjoy. Recovery is hard work and it takes a long time, but it doesn't have to remain passionless forever. After an affair, for the unfaithful spouse, moving forward isn't just about terminating the affair. Most of the time, there's some grieving to do. The grieving of the loss of the affair partner and feelings they had about themselves and all of this. And they usually have to do that with a therapist. That's not work for them to do together. Usually the betrayed spouse doesn't need to really be a part of that. They just need to know that they're doing their work to work through all of that. And that's hard for some betrayed spouses to hear, but it is a necessary component. I don't know how often, but a lot. And while they're doing that, or shortly right after, it's also about recreating this vision with their spouse. Recovery for the hurt spouse isn't just grieving and forgiving. It requires the courage to once again dream with their spouse regarding what they want and creating this shared vision for their life individually and their life together. But the most important step, I think, is that you have to address the initial trauma of the betrayal before you can begin healing the relationship itself. I believe it's the mistake that a lot of marriage therapists make by working on deficits of the marriage and vision casting first. You've got to deal with the betrayal. And that can take months, sometimes years. But once you've found qualified outside help and are able to talk rationally with one another, casting a new vision for your future, it'll be extremely helpful in giving you something worth working towards. Below this video, you're going to see an exercise that I want you to do. It's a jumping off point for those of you who need to create an exciting new vision of meaning and purpose to your marriage and really to yourselves. To create a new vision, you first have to discover your mate all over again. And then the research shows, whether it's John Gottman or Stan Tatkin, we have to keep those files updated. This is certainly not a definitive list of questions or of everything that you can or should be talking about, but it's a great start. Just take a look at the questions below and schedule some time to go through each one and take your time. Don't just go through them and check the box. You shouldn't be able to finish this exercise in a single setting. My goal is going to take you 3 to 5 hours to walk through it and discuss it. And if it brings up a memory then you talk about that. This is about building a vision and connection all at the same time. You want to try to be open and honest and thoughtful and take turns answering the questions. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. But hopefully you're going to find yourself, learn something about yourself and about your spouse, and be able to create a vision together, at least take the first step in doing that. One of the important aspects of creating a new vision is to be able to understand your mate and why they believe what they believe, letting curiosity lead the way. And take the time with all of that to dream about the life you'd both like to have that would encourage and nurture you both and help you both to have a more fulfilling life individually and together. But if you're stuck and not sure what to do next, what I'd really like you to do is consider registering for the EMS Online course to learn with and from other couples in the same situation and grow together as a couple while also finding hope and clarity and more connection for a life well lived with a common vision, even and especially after infidelity. Thank you so much for joining me as we looked at this topic of, am I really chosen? Do they really want to be with me? And I look forward to being with you again next week.